All right, still Saturday the 20th. I think it's the 20th. So we're getting ready to do some woodwork on the bus. Finally, we're doing some woodwork. How about that? I bought some 3/4 inch thick oak boards to make a door jamb that's going to go around that side opening there. And I'll get to that in a minute here. But firstly, I bought one piece of 1x8, I guess it was, and I'm going to cut that in half long ways with the table saw here. And so the first thing I'm doing, it's been a long time since I've done woodwork on this thing. I've been doing a lot of cutting metal with a carborundum blade, and there's paint overspray, glue, and all kinds of grime and stuff on here. So the first thing I'm doing is cleaning this thing up. I'm going to just give this thing a complete preventive maintenance service here. I know that the blade raise and lower needs some lube, and there's an angle little gauge thing here that I think is out of whack. So we're going to go through it, make sure it's in good shape, and then I'm going to bring the boards in here and start cutting some wood. Okay, you know, I could have been a little bit more diligent and taken more videos, but kind of into working here today, so sorry about that. I removed all this mechanism. This bracket here, we take out this bolt and that bolt, and this comes down, and then the whole piece will come out. This has got a groove in it, this piece, and this piece has got like a tongue in it in that arc, and that gives us the ability to change the angle of the blade. Here you can see a piece of it up in there. That little arc spot right there. So, you know, I cleaned everything. I put a little bit of lube on there. I don't know if grease was a good idea or not, because crud sticks to it. And I cleaned up all that, and I did some adjusting to the rod and those stops. Added the washers there, and I was putting this piece on, and I tightened the bolts, and I completely blew out one of the holes, and I didn't really over tighten it. It's just that this is just some crap metal, right? So what that caused was it allowed the bolt to just go clean through it. It's supposed to stop like that. Now it just falls right through. So this piece is ruined, pot metal. So I decided to make a new one, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. So I just got a piece of 2-inch aluminum I happen to have. I made it the thickness of this, and then I counterbored the holes enough so that the bolts would stick out enough to match what the bolts would stick out on the other piece. And you know, it's just to hold the end of the shaft with this this hole here. Sorry about that. So I'm getting ready to install this back on the table saw, and it goes right here on the side like that. And we're going to put our 2 bolts in it, and then our pin goes in the hole, then our wheel goes on with the nut, and when you tighten the nut down, it causes friction against this, and that acts like the brake. So let me get the washers, the nuts, and the 2 screws in there, and we'll have this thing put back together here lickety split. Okay, got it. We're all set. All right. So I didn't take apart any of this. That was fine, really. I just cleaned everything. I got the 2 adjustment screws in there and all lubed up. Got the handles on, got the hardware on. Everything's tight. I've already played with these adjustments. They work nice and smooth. The locks work good now, better than ever on this one. And this one's good. I got the little pointer. It's a rinky-dink little thing, but it's been there for 30 years. I think it could stay. Now we're getting ready to put the motor back on. But before that, this is the way the table saw came. It was just this big open space here. And actually that board right there, a piece of masonite, and this one and the two on the sides I installed, as well as I fixed one up on the bottom. So what it does is it captures all the sawdust and everything else, right, to help keep the shop a little bit cleaner. And it's also good for if I have an oil spill, I can always grab a handful of that stuff and put it on my oil spill to use like oil dry. And that's exactly why that front panel is loose. I removed the screws for some oil spill emergency I had. I just never put the thing back on. But to close off this area, I've got this piece of upholstery vinyl. I mean, you can see it's seen better days, but I just put it on there. Again, this is like, honestly, like 30-year-old stuff. Okay, and I had a bungee cord that pulled this tight, and I don't know what to tell you about that, but bungee cord's long gone. So now the motor, those 2 points go on here and just hang. Then I can put the belt on. Okay, the motor's hung. So it just slides on these 2 pins, and there's 2 set screws right there to keep it from sliding off. And actually the pins are a little bit skinnier where they go through this metal, so it can't go in too deep, if you know what I mean. So now it's the weight of the motor pivots on that pivot. See there? It just, and so that is what gives us our belt tension. There you go. So I'm going to fire this thing up without the blade first, of course. I'll close my. Okay. That's 2 horsepower. That thing just goes bam and it's running. Let's see. Nice and smooth. Yeah, it used to have a guard on it here, but it was just too much of a pain in the ass. I just make sure I stay away from it. I rebuilt that mechanism a while back, put new bearings in it. That's why it's so nice and quiet right now. It used to have a heck of a racket. Alright, so put the blade on and clean up, and now my table saw. Well, I'm going to hit this with some sandpaper to do a final clean. I already scraped it all off with a razor blade to get all the paint. And oh yeah, I removed these and I cleaned them on my bench grinder's wire wheel. These were pretty illegible with all the thread. So now we're ready to rip that piece of oak board in half and get back to work on the bus. Okay, take 2. So now we've got some adjusting to do. I've got my protractor guy here, where are you, set right on 90 degrees. It's a hair off, close enough for me to, it's a fraction of a degree. But you can see we're way off down there. Okay, so I'm gonna give this thing a little nudge and get me right on 90. It's actually easier to see through my iPhone than looking at it regular, because I can't see those lines, man. So yeah, I gotta get down in there and loosen the screw and the lock nut right there. You really can't see it from this angle, but there's a lock nut. I got to back off, and I got to loosen the screw a little bit, and then retighten the lock nut. keep doing that until they get it 90 degrees to the table. Okay, Houston, we got a problem. It's all come back to me now. This machine has a bit of a manufacturer's flaw in it, to a degree, I guess. No pun intended. When I adjust that screw down there all the way in, it doesn't get me to 90 degrees. And now I remember this, oddly enough, after all these years, plus the reminder, this washer was in, quote unquote, the wrong place, underneath the saddle right there that holds that side of the mechanism. And it's actually a shim to compensate for that flaw. So when I did all this work, I purposely left this out, all the while thinking to myself, I remember putting this in for a reason, but I couldn't tell what it was until now. So I'm going to have to get in there, and this is not going to be hard. Just loosen the 2 bolts, cap screws on that side, so it'll drop down a hair, and on this side, feed this washer up in there, and then tighten them all down. So then I'll go ahead and put this adjustment back probably where it was before I dorked with it. Okay, I think we got it. If I can get my light to cooperate here. Okay. Alright, so I got to tighten the lock nut and check it, make sure nothing changed, and then we're going to give this thing a test cut. Okay, table saw's done. So I wasn't trying to get this perfectly clean, just smooth. So what I've always done, actually, this is probably the same piece of sandpaper on this sanding block that I've had for 30 years. It's just a belt from a belt sander and a piece of 1x4 trimmed to the width of the belt, and a little piece of wood that is like a wedge, and you just tap it in there to tighten it up, and you get a great sanding board. So I just sand it in one direction at a 45 this way, and then I just sand it at a 45 this way. It gives me a little bit of a crosshatch effect. Next I'll take a paper towel or a rag or something and wipe this thing down and give it a light coat of silicone spray, and then it won't rust. There you have it.